So I'm not into using too much time on history and discussing how things worked before and how they work now, but I think you need to know one thing about Angular, and that is it has a baby brother, right? It has a baby brother called Angular.js. And that's kind of the first set of Angular. That was the first thing I tried to work with as Angular, and I loved it, but because it was so much cooler than, because it was a single page application, it was so much cooler than the old MVC framework I used before that. So I loved Angular. But it had some twerks, it had some problems. It was slow, there was too much data you had to work with. It didn't quite always do the things we expected it did. So Angular was just not perfect, but it was a very good start on what we wanted as web developers. So we loved it, and we encouraged them to keep working on it, making it better, and they did. And at some point they said, we need to now change direction because Angular is going in the wrong direction. We want to improve and we want to get back to basics to make it even more powerful than what it is right now with Angular.js. So what they did was this was released in 2010, so that was an old guy. So they worked on something new called Angular 2. Now, Angular 2, they changed so much. Every Angular developer said, oh my god, I just learned Angular.js, now I have to learn everything again. And a lot of things they had to know, that they had to work with differently, but a lot of things were still kind of the same, so I don't think it was a complete change, but there was a lot of new stuff. And then they did something else. They also added something called Typescript in there, like, oh my god, Microsoft got their hands into this now, some developers said, and jumped off ship and said, oh my god, it's going to sync now, Microsoft is taking over. But actually they added Typescript, and Typescript is kind of powerful. I really like it now. I use JavaScript, I don't use TypeScript, but it is kind of powerful. I'll try and give an example of TypeScript in a second in the next lesson. But they use TypeScript also now in Angular, which they didn't do in Angular 1, but in Angular 2 they also introduced that to the system, and there was so much new to learn. But that's kind of, Angular 2 popped up, and they started this in 2016, so this is a very, very new framework right now. And it's really up to date. It's very powerful to use. They keep trying to make it smaller and smaller, the Angular part you need to build your web application and use your web application. They try to make the tools around it so much better for unit testing, so much better for reusing your code. They try to make each application into small components so we can reuse them all over our application. They really work for us. So I have a huge respect for what Angular is doing right now, even though I was really one of the guys who said, okay, Angular is dead, I'm going to skip Angular, I want to go back to something else. But now I believe in them again, and I think Angular will be so cool in the future. But Angular then said after a while, okay, now we're done with Angular 2, let's jump to Angular 4. And people were like again, what, why, what happened to Angular 3? Have you guys just skipped a version? And yes, they actually did. But it was because Angular has a lot of different packages in there. Now a lot of those packages was called like version 2.3 or 2.4 or 2.6, but there's one package in there called the router package was called 3.2 or something like that. It at least had a 3 version, so they couldn't say we're going to jump to 3.0 now, because that would mean the router package would be in front of them. So they said, let's just go to version 4. Let's skip version 3. So that's what they had to do. So now we're actually at version 4 right now. And that's the stable release we have available right now. And it's actually, they're working on a version 5 that should be in the release. I think right now it's the 23rd of October, so it's very close. And I'll show you, of course, when we get to that, how you can update your application. But that's kind of the history of Angular, and I think I'm going to end it there. TypeScript, we're going to talk about TypeScript and ECMAScript and ECMAScript 5 and 6. And we're going to talk about so much more. So now you kind of have the history. You can go on Wikipedia if you want to learn more. I think their documentation in here is quite good. So there's a lot about Angular in here if you want to dive into the history for real. Let's try and talk about what TypeScript is compared to the other JavaScript and ECMAScript languages out there. See you next time.